Welcome, everybody, to Forging Brains podcast. I'm Riley Kirkpatrick here with my co-host, Gavin Cooper. Tonight we got a pretty special guest. We got old Tom Petersen. Tom has been on the AFA team, the WCB team, and he has won multiple titles, including international titles. So we're pretty lucky to have Tom with us tonight, taking the time. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, that's great. So, man, how have you been? Is it pretty damn cold there right now?
Yeah, we're having a good winter to start it off. We just got another 4 or 5 inches today, and temps kind of been floating around the 20 to -5 since probably for the last 6 weeks or so, 5-6 weeks. So
yeah,
it's
I'd
been
say
good.
that's pretty damn cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it though. So
How do you want to go out and shoot horses in that kind of weather?
It's just a different challenge. You don't sweat as much. Like today we were shoeing, and it looked like we were stuck inside of a snow globe. It was pretty cool.
Oh, are you outside still?
Oh yeah.
Really?
We didn't shoot a single horse inside today, and we did 5 or 6 full sets and 3 or 4 trims. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I guess
Braving
it's
the
a
element.
different deal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's the Viking in me. I guess I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah,
I couldn't do it just standing out in the rain though. Just
Yeah,
just
the rain.
doing 5 sets in the rain, just getting soaked.
No, I
Yeah,
can't.
that sucks.
I can't do the rain. I'm a quitter when it comes to the rain, but the snow falls on you, don't really get that wet.
Yeah.
So-
no,
I
that's a
suppose
good
if it's
point.
20 degrees and snowing, it's different than 32 degrees snowing here where it's damn near just the same as rain.
Yeah. It's got to be pretty cold here to be to the point where we got to wear gloves and stuff. Like most of the day, I didn't even wear gloves. It's a dry cold, which whatever that means. It's not as bad. Like if you go to Minnesota or something like that, it feels 20 degrees colder at the same temp.
Yeah, real
So-
cold.
Oh, man. So
Yeah.
you've been probably pretty busy practicing. Has that been cutting into your snowmobile time then, huh?
I practiced a good bit for convention, nothing crazy, but it's kind of one of those things where I like to get up early and practice when I practice, so it really isn't that much of a change if I'm practicing a bunch or not. If something big's going on like convention, then you want to get in the fire 4 or 5 days a week at least, just to get everything figured out, get the processes, get the sizes down, get the rhythm of it.
So you like to do that
Yeah.
before you go to work?
Yeah, I like the warm up aspect of it. Do that, get a good sweat on, and then go do your day's worth of work. And if depending on how the morning went, if it went pretty shitty, you stew on it all day, and you get back to the house and you get back in the shop and try to right some wrongs.
Try to make it better.
Yeah, and it's kind of good for the brain, I feel like too, because it's like having that second go, at the contest. If you're at a contest where you get 2 shoe and goes in a day, it's great because the mistakes you made the first go that you got pointed out to you, you can go through and fix them and see what you can do with that information. It's the same thing. You practice in the morning, if you have some major mistakes happen and it pisses you off, you stew on it all day long. You think about how to make it better, how to get around them, or not have them happen to start with. And then when you get home, you have a game plan on something to do to get around it, and see if it works.
It's a pretty good point
That's good
because
stuff.
Riley and I were just talking, so we're going to do a couple goes this weekend, and we were going to try and do one of the 2 and forward and then one of the roadster, but if we do kind of one of each or whatever, it's going to you might not be able to fix what we messed up on the first one. Kind of like what
exactly.
you're saying there.
Whenever I sit down and make a shoe, like for convention this year, for the specialty, I'd just spend a week on one shoe. I would make that one shoe all week long and dial that thing in, get my sizes down, get my punches and tools set up, to the point where you don't have any questions. You don't make the same mistakes the third day that you made on the first day. So you're starting to critique your mistakes even further than just making 2 or 3 shoes. You know, when you get to the 6th or 7th shoe in a row, you're really getting a rhythm. You're really getting a pace set on how to make it and be able to dissect it, you know. And then you skip onto that, and then when you leave it, even if it's a couple weeks before you make another one of those shoes, it's so well ingrained in you from that week. You can refer to so much more information, I feel like.
So how
No,
far
I think,
out are
like-
you starting?
It varies on the contest and like the difficulty of it, like if there's shoes that I've made before or not.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like I'd say probably a month to 6 weeks out. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen you make one the day before. We
Yeah.
went to Sheridan and you
Yeah.
like won the class.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I imagine it doesn't always work that way.
No, it doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
We dove into it right away, but it's great. I think so. You're saying you could make probably the same amount, say it's a roadster, just for say, and you starting to make your shoe pile. And if you're going to make 20 roadsters, just using easy numbers, in between starting for that contest and before the contest day, you think if you made those 20 roadsters in like 2-10 chunks instead of just sporadically throughout, you're going to get more out of it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I feel like if you make, so like what everybody wants to do when they get in the shop, right, is if they got 5 shoes they got to make for a contest coming up, they're going to make 1 shoe, maybe 2 shoes of the same shoe, and then they're going to get bored and they're going to move on to the next one. When reality, they still left a bunch of mistakes on that second shoe that they didn't, either zone in on or
Fix.
Fully fix. Yeah. So the way I see it is if you make them consecutively in a row, like that's what we typically do in practices too. Teams, like the team practices, is we never just do in a day, because we typically do 3 goes in a day. We don't do 1 of each. We do 2 or 3 of the same discipline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And those are obviously then the mistakes that you're going back to fix. Those are mistakes that happen pretty early in the process then, huh?
Yeah, sometimes like I don't know, like I feel like once you get into that 5th shoe, you're starting to come to size, have a process down, get a feel for the shoe on how much to draw or not draw, or stand up for a hockey stick, stuff like that. So you get more comfortable with it, so you can start to get more relaxed and get more stuff done in one heat. And then you can take and go from there to just further advance the process.
Makes sense.
No, and so that's you're starting to like cut things out then after that are going to start being like, I guess, things that like, would you say that like, you're going to rasp out, or things that you just like,
Yep.
like that's always really hard for me. So like that's literally, me and Gavin were just talking about it when you got on, is like, we've just been making roadsters all week, sending them to each other and just trying to like dial down through the process. And that's one of the hardest things for me, is widest point to widest point on the roadster. I feel like is drawing it enough. And like, especially the lateral side, just like, it's just going to be chunky as shit. And so it's like, it probably would help me more to just pile through probably 4 or 5 of them in the afternoon instead of just 1 or 2 of those damn things.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of
it's a hard thing to know.
Yeah, and I feel like with the roadster specifically, in any like very sectiony type shoe, you got to know how much you can take with the rasp, and how close to get it to hammer finished, in the sense of like, if you get it really close hammer finished, then you can just use your rasp to accentuate that line. My goal always is to get as hammer finished as possible, and then it takes less time to rasp, and you have less massive mistakes to try to take out. I feel like there's 2 types of competitors. Like, there's the smashers and bashers that just fly through the shoe really quickly, leave a bunch of mistakes so that they can get to the vise and fix it. The negative that I see in that is the fact that if it's a hammer finish class, you're SOL. You know what I mean? Like, you can't undo that type of mentality, right? So if you're the type of mentality, though, that likes to hammer finish your shoes, they take a little bit longer, but there's less rasping to do. And then that guy is equally going to get done with the same amount of time, just less time in the vise. And so when it turns on to be a hammer finish class, that dude's going to do really well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so like with those type of shoes, like you're talking about, like you can either take the rasping effort that you take to make it look okay and fix some section mistakes, or you can take that same effort and you can accentuate the section and make it really stand out and really pop by just taking that same effort and not having to take a bunch of mistakes out.
Because rasping essentially sucks.
It massively sucks.
It is.
Rasping is like grinding, right, Riley?
Oh, I'm so bad at both of them. Like it pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like every stroke, I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Why am I here?
Yeah. You start
But,
second
like,
guessing
and, like,
life choices.
Oh, like I also get stuck in this fucking watchmaker mind where it's like, I mean, you I'm sure you've seen me do it, like where it's like I'm bad about, like, all of a sudden it's like I'm thinking way too far ahead and I'm trying to make each step kind of nice, and it's like it's not fucking working out for me sometimes, you know. So like that's where I'll struggle in a class. Like
yeah, like we've had that conversation a couple times where like not every part of the piece of the puzzle has to be perfect to move on, because they're either better off not being perfect because they get messed up later on down the road, or it actually helps them become better through the process.
Yeah, but it's so hard to know that sometimes of like, so that's like this learning process this week is like, if you once you put your Fuller in your Roadster, the lines are all there pretty much, like, and you can't fudge with them too much after that, you know, like it's kind of like you have to rasp on them or something. So it's like that's been the hard part for me, is knowing where to put those fucking lines in before I put my Fullering in. And
that's
so
just
it's been
making roadsters after
hard.
roadsters.
Yeah, exactly. So man, yeah, we got off a little sidetrack. Tom, let's introduce. Kind of, I know you aren't the type of guy to brag on yourself, but let's hear about what you've done. Be a good time to let you brag on yourself.
Yeah, how many?
How
long you been competing in the WCB?
The first contest for the WCB that I ever went to, I think it was in 2011 in Madison, and Gene Leisure was judging, and I just went and watched. The guy that I apprenticed with for the most of the time that I apprenticed, I wouldn't say talk negative about competing and stuff like that, but he definitely didn't have anything good to say about it, or making shoes or any of that kind of stuff. And so I kind of wanted to just go see it and get comfortable with it, and see what I was going to get into. And then the first one that I actually went to and competed at was, I think, in 2012, in Eureka, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, since 2012.
And then how long did it take you to move through the ranks until you became up to category 4 essentially?
Yeah. So I want to say it was the first year I did all of them to make the year end. I won category 1 and then won category 2. And I kind of made a mistake. So when I was competing in category 2, I went to the first category 2. I think I won. And so I thought you were supposed to have to move up. So then I went category 3, the next one. And sure shit, if I didn't win, I won the 3 first bat. And so after talking with Craig and figuring out what the heck to actually do with it, I stayed in the 2s for the rest of the year and just kept going there, or I jumped up to the 3s that year and won the 3s. But I want to say it was 2014. I made the WCB team for 2015. So went and got that in my category 3, and then was category 4 after that, and won the first national title with the WCB in 2016. So the first year I think it was in category 4 or so.
Yeah, just moving up quick and then winning.
Yeah, so 4 years.
Yep.
Yeah. How many times have you been on the team then?
I was on the team 5 years in a row, from 15 to 19. Did that.
And is this your first year on the AFT?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
your first year when you were doing the category 1s, was your practice regimen pretty similar to the way it is now, or how much has it differed from when you were first getting going to where you are now? Like, how much work did you have to put in then? You know, because you said you won category 1 for the year. Like, maybe it could be helpful for other guys that are trying to, you know, get into
Yeah,
that
like
grind.
I would say that I pretty much just, like, I've always kind of been called a workaholic, so it's kind of hard for me to justify if it was a lot of practice or not, because in the sense of, like, I went and shot horses all day, and then I'd sit in the forge for a couple hours in the evening or something like that after dinner, or, you know, stuff like that. I didn't sit and watch TV and, like, you know, just hang out and stuff. I was productive, so I just stayed kind of doing that. I didn't do it every night, but the way that it's different, I'd say, is I do more morning practices now, in the sense of, like, I don't want it to interfere with spending time with, you know, my wife in the evenings and stuff. She's not a morning person, so she's not going to be awake at that time anyway. So it kind of works out to do it in the morning. But in category 1, when I was competing, like, in practicing, there was just a lot more frustrations, a lot more beating head against the wall and, like, trying to figure stuff out and, you know, chucking shoes out your shop and stuff like that. So
Did you have somebody you could like lean on and like try to ask questions for and like, you know, get ideas from, or like, oh, I'm struggling with this. How do I get better? Or
yeah, there was a couple guys that I was practicing with that were kind of in the same realm that I was at the time, that we'd bounce ideas off of a little bit, but it's just hard to, I don't know, I'm kind of like a self-reliant type person more. You know, if I can somehow fix it or do it, I'm going to do it. And so, like, I just would keep beating my head against the wall and looking at stuff and figuring stuff out and trying stuff and doing that. I'd, you know, make phone calls to Craig every now and again and, you know, talk to him a little bit. And, you know, he's got a way of making you think outside the box, you know, a little bit. So
yeah, we talked about that not too long ago,
Yeah.
Riley and I.
yeah, I mean, it's good.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I think we could go back even. So I want to go back some even further of, like, there's a bunch of that who says kind of like, I think, who says about who you are, the person and stuff. So where do you think you got that just like hard work from? Like, was that something you were around growing up? And you are you can see things that other people aren't seeing. I've seen things that you've built and everything else. Like, I've seen presses, power hammers, forges. Like, you can see something and you can get it on paper and make it into reality. So where was that? Have you always had that, like, even growing up, or is it something you were around?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I didn't see that very much. Like, the closest that I saw that as a kid was my grandfather that did a lot of woodworking. He would do a lot of, like, scroll saw and stuff like that and lathe work. But I didn't really spend that much time with him in the workshop at all. It was always fishing with him, or gardening, or, you know, splitting wood, doing that kind of stuff. The work ethic type stuff, I think, probably came from my parents. You know, they were always, I guess, you know, pretty driven to work and stuff. But I started working at the dairies when I was a kid, you know, about 12 years old. I'd go spend 3 days a week with the dairy farmer and just live there and just work. And I really enjoyed that. You know, it's long hours, 5 o'clock in the morning until 10, 11 o'clock at night. But you get to see something that you built that day or you did that day and be productive. I would say that being able to see it and produce it, I really noticed come around, I would say probably high school. Like, if I saw something, I could usually, you know, build it. So.
And did your high school have classes that you were like able to do that in?
Yeah, so there was a shop class, there was a welding class, and then I took it one step further, and so I don't know if they still do it now or not, but it's called post-secondary education. So my senior year of high school, I just went straight to tech college. So all I had to do was take 2 prerequisites, I think, like a human relations and a writing class, along with the industrial welding course that I was taking. And then I didn't even have to go to high school. So I just pieced out when I was a junior and went straight to college. And it was great because the dairy farmers that I was working for always have broken down conveyors and feeders and stuff like that. So they knew that I had the equipment at my disposal, and so they just give me a parts list of things to make them. And I think one semester I didn't really have a whole lot to do other than just projects for the dairy farmer.
So
Yeah.
at that point, was that kind of like your outlook of like, this is what I'm going to do in my life? I'm going to milk cows and weld shit.
Yeah. For a while there, I thought about actually like doing the dairy route. The reason that I didn't is I felt like you had to be way too intimate with your cows, because like you can pick your cows out by their tits, not because of the numbers on their ears. And I thought that was really messed up. So it kind of scared me off.
Yeah.
So
It's
So
a
how'd
lot.
you
Of, it's a lot of
focus?
poop. It's a
Yeah, it
lot of
is.
poop and blood,
Oh,
man. Like
Yeah.
just
Well,
like copious amounts.
yeah, and apparently I didn't have enough of the dairy. So like right after, I think it was my senior year of high school, when I was going to college, I worked for a company where it was, I don't know if I should probably say this to the public or not, but I'd pumped liquid shit from the dairies. And so we would go from one dairy to the next dairy, and we would just pump liquid shit by the millions of gallons. So
I can
nothing.
stand horse shit all day, but cow shit all day is fucking rank.
See, I think pig shit's the worst. Like cow shit's okay, but pig shit's nasty.
Both.
I don't mind pig
I'm
shit
gonna
so
pick.
much.
I'm gonna pick just both. I don't want to deal with either one that much.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. In a perfect
being a
world, there wouldn't be
complaint
either.
like a
Yeah.
whiny ass team roper, man. That's the worst part about team roping. Is getting shit on your rope.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, but
So what-
when I went to, oh, go ahead.
Oh, keep going.
I was gonna say when I went to college and I did the industrial welding course, that's where I was gonna probably shoot for, was just going down that route, because I definitely have more of a fabricator mindset. You know,
Yeah.
kind of like you're describing.
Yep. And so, did you go to like how long was college for you?
Just that year. It was a 1-year course. I could have
nice.
transferred to another college for a second year, but it would have been a lot more CNC and robotics, which I really didn't want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of computer work.
Yep.
So how
then how
did
did
you
that-
go? Yeah, go from there to shoeing horses.
So I worked in a couple different shops over a couple years. Doing
Welding shops.
Yeah, doing one shop was a repair shop I worked at for a while, and then one shop was a like a production shop, which I only worked there for 4 months, and that takes the life and
It's
soul
shit.
right out of a human being. Yeah, like you literally sit in a booth with a machine with a tote of parts, and you put the parts together and make the same part all day, every day.
Over and over.
That's
like
when
thousands
I
of
was
them
a
did.
senior in high school. I worked at a fab shop that all we did was production, and like when you go to the grocery store and those little things that hold the price tag out at the freezer,
Yep.
man,
Yeah.
I would weld like 1,000 of those a day.
Yeah.
I'd
It's
weld the
mind-numbing.
backs of them. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it was just like I was the same as you. I was like, I'm gonna go be a welder, and you're like, I might not want to be a welder.
Yeah.
This isn't
Yeah.
that great.
Like in that first year, I worked at 3 different shops, and like the third shop I stuck at for probably a year and a half before I went to shoeing school, and like it was definitely the funnest shop, and like I could have definitely seen myself starting one of those businesses pretty quick. And that was just an industrial structural steel shop, and so it was a
Okay,
pretty
yeah.
small one, but we would just get the blueprints for all the buildings that we were
Yep.
building, and we would do all the stairs, railing, I-beams, columns, gussets, pretty much everything in-house, and then we would ship it off, and then somebody would assemble it on site.
And that's like I don't know, but it's like that's something I could see you doing again someday.
Oh yeah, easily.
Like
Yeah, that's kind of like
I could see you with your blacksmithing and where you live. Pretty good market for that.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of time, a lot of bitchy
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, but like I feel like it's one of those things where this, like I said, it's kind of like plan B. Like I've spent the last, the time that I've been shoeing, slowly acquiring, machines, so that if the day comes where I can't bend over, I'm ready to rock and roll in that world. So
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I agree. So, what made you go to shoeing school?
I think we got our first horse when I was a kid, probably like when I was like 7 or 8.
Okay.
And I would say it was probably kind of the push for me the most. And then my parents moved where we had some acreages, and then we, I think we got like 3 horses right after that, and we had them pretty steady growing up and whatnot, and did a bunch of trail riding and just kind of dinking around really. And I started training and doing some stuff when I was younger. And
did you grow up in Montana?
No, Minnesota, central Minnesota.
Okay.
Yep. And then just kind of grew up with horses. And then when I was welding, it wasn't around horses at all. Wasn't, I was probably living an hour from my parents' house, and didn't really bother me not to be around them. And then the more I was not around them, the more I was getting kind of grumpy and just kind of like irritable, and just, I wouldn't say that I wasn't happy. It was just, didn't feel like I felt like there was something missing maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
And then kind of just starting to talk to people and figured out like, you can take metal and put it with horses, and then, you're a horse shoer. So
wow.
I was like, well, that sounds like something I can maybe do, and not really knowing if I'd like it or not, but it was, piece of cake, like just something
idea,
I really enjoyed right from the get-go. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So you really truly love being around horses like every day then?
Yeah, I do. And it's funny, like I haven't owned a horse personally since, like, I want to say that the last one, he died 2016 or 17.
That the one in your side room.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just kind of one of those things where, like, I've been so busy competing and traveling that I was like I'm content being around with him all day, not necessarily having my own to ride. So it fills that void. But yeah, I do. Yeah. I definitely genuinely just like being around him.
That's the question I always get from clients. Like, do you own horses yourself? And that's basically what I tell them every time is like, I'm around your guys' horses every day. I don't have time to go take care of my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus they're expensive. So
yeah. And like my wife has one, and I know it probably bothers her that I don't have one, because we ride together a lot when we had horses and stuff, and it would do stuff and go up in the mountains. And we both definitely enjoyed it. It's just now I'm, gone down the motor route a little bit more, and got a dirt bike and a side-by-side, and I don't have to worry about feeding them or picking up their shit.
Yep.
Or them colicking.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I don't have to worry about it dying one day.
Just like by itself. Just like, shit, this is great.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you go to shoeing school at?
Here, actually, in Bozeman at Montana State, under Tom Wolf.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Yep.
Is that what led you to Montana?
A little bit. Like, I don't know why, but like all through high school and stuff like that, when people would ask you what you were going to do and where you were going to live, I didn't know what I was going to do, but my answer always was going to be I was going to live in Montana. Like, I just was born in the wrong state. And so right after welding college, I came out and worked on a ranch that spring for a little while in Helmville, Montana. And then I think I went like 3 or 4 days without seeing a single person. And at that age, I was like, that's probably not the best way to find a wife. So,
yeah.
Nowadays, it sounds perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Like right now, if I could take her with me.
If you do
man,
find one out there, though, it might be the right one.
It could be. Process of elimination, the only one. Yeah. So I went back and lived in Minnesota for a couple years, and then came back out here to Montana State, and stayed in the valley here in Gallatin Valley, and rode along with probably 5 or 6 different guys over 2 years. So
do you meet Melvin in Minnesota?
No, so she's originally from Golden, Colorado, and she came up to Bozeman. I think she spent a semester up here in college, and then went back and finished college in Denver, and then came back and moved permanently up here. And she was actually working at a big guest ranch that Philip Morris owns, or used to own. They've sold it, I guess. And Tom Wolf had it lined up where he was the shoer at that ranch, but he would bring the spring course to put the first set of shoes on. I think they had like 100 or 110 horses. And the spring course would put the first set of shoes on, and the fall course would come in at the end of the season and pull all the shoes and trim them. And so I was in the spring course, so we were out there shoeing for like 3 days. I think there was like 12 or 13 of us in the class, and she was one of the gals that was working as a wrangler, and that's how I met her. We didn't start dating for about a year later, but that's kind of how we met.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then, so you go through shoeing school and everything, you're apprenticing, and so what was your impression when you went to that first WCB just to watch? Like, were you already making shoes and everything, or?
Yeah, like I got my Journeyman in 2010, and I guess you could say that I knew enough about handmaids and like the basics and understanding of moving material, where like I could get it done, but there was a lot more questions than there was answers, and so there's a huge impression that was put on me. I think when I came up to the tent the first time, I want to say the WCB team was Raleigh Desiato, Gene, Tim McPhee, and Chris, I think maybe. And I just remember them watching them do a demo on a horse and shoeing it and being blown away at how fast they could get stuff done and how efficient they were and how much the shoe that they built looked like the foot they were putting it on so quickly and like effortlessly. It really like made a big impression on me. So
Yeah,
so you
like,
think like
things had a reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
do you think by like completing like your Journeyman was like the next, like you didn't feel like you completed, like you were at a finishing point, like this was the next step, like now you had an understanding like, okay, I completed this, now I have somewhere else I need to go and something better to
Like
get to.
I don't know how you could advertise it for the Journeyman, but like everybody thinks once you get your Journeyman that you've arrived and you can call yourself a Journeyman, right? It is the biggest crock of shit that there is. Cause like to me, the Journeyman is like, yeah, you can tie your laces on your shoes and you can wipe your own ass now. Great. Now you're good. Now, okay. Like that's the way I feel like the Journeyman skill level is. Like it's a great achievement and it's a really good thing, but like it's not the top of the mountain. Like you're just realizing now that there's a mountain in front of you.
It's a good basic, right?
Yes.
But it's also crazy how complicated they make it.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a simple thing. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy
I feel
complicated.
I feel like you should have to get your Journeyman to be able to go hang your shingle out there and be able to, go shoot for the public. Like
yeah, I would have to agree with you. I am I'm not for a lot of government, but it's like it's gonna happen probably to us sooner or later. One of these days, like governments everywhere, and the Journeyman step is like I've heard Craig say it's a driving test. It's like, and it is a decent driving test.
Yeah,
like that is what it is.
Just pretty much showing that you have an understanding that there's blood inside of it, and you know how to take a piece of steel and wrap it to the trim that you made it to the foot.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it like that, that's pretty basic.
It's super basic, and it's like making a bar shoe, to fit a pattern can be as hard as you want to make it or as simple as you want to make it, but it is a good understanding that if a guy can forge weld a bar shoe, fit to a pattern with a clip, that guy could probably, or person can probably do quite a bit in the trick. Like, they're gonna be okay. They can go out there and I don't know, do no harm, because it's still hard not to do that, but they're gonna be all right.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where I feel like, I guess, inadequacies in knowledge and skill in the farrier, I would say, do a lot of damage to horses. Like, there's a lot of horses that get stuck or trimmed short or out of balance in a matter where, when they walk up on you and you look at them, it's borderline cruelty.
Man, I question it all the time in my head. Is like, what is the base? What is our base here? Like, where are we? Like, and it's like the trims I don't worry about as much. Like horses that are just trims, either they're gonna be sore or they're just gonna figure themselves out for the most. It seems like, but it's like once we start putting steel on the bottom of their feet, like we're influencing them pretty hard, and it goes that way. But it's like I'm always thinking, and it's like I always go back to it's like nails in the white line seemed like the basic. Like that's where we gotta be. Like what is it for you when you like see a horse? Like we're like, man, if we could all just do this, we'd be going somewhere.
I think a lot of it's a lot of it is the trim. Like there's a lot of horses that like just you don't got to take all their foot off just because it's there to take off. Like I tell my apprentices all the time, because there's a couple barefoot trimmers in the area, which I don't have any problem with barefoot trimmers as long as they don't cripple horses. Yeah. And so there's a couple around the area though that like definitely have taken them way too short. And it's one of those things where it's like it takes a lot more skill to maintain depth and not get distortion than it does to just take all the foot that there is there on the foot off, because then there's nothing to distort, right? But at the same time, the horse is crippled.
But then he's not moving around much, putting weird loads on the foot.
Exactly. So like I've had people comment and be like, well, why does your foot look longer than the barefooter's foot? And I'm like, well, it's because the horse ain't sore. It's got something to protect the bottom of the pedal bone, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
But it takes more skills to be able to maintain that depth without it distorting.
It's hard though too, right? That it's like there's those feet that look like they are short from the bottom, but they still look long from the top type deal and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do you kind of go about those feet and fighting to try to make the client happy?
Like a happy medium, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, is like I just tell them that they're all individuals. Like some horses have long pastures, some horses have short pastures. And you are never going to make a long pastured horse look like it has a short pastured horse's hoof capsule. Like, they go hand in hand, you know? And so it's not my job to dictate what they get. Like, they are what they are, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just, I think it's hard for some clients to accept it. And there's somebody out there that's going to tell them different too, right?
Yes. Yep.
They can find somebody that it's going to agree with them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna be like, he is too long. I'm gonna solve this issue
for you. But then usually they come back around though, because they're like, he can't walk. Can you come back?
Yeah.
You know. So.
Oh, that's like our biggest thing here is we're so freaking wet. It's like if you take the horse down too much, it's like he's gonna wash out and be a little bit sore. It's not gonna be a very good deal. You might want to leave a little bit to him, but it's hard to keep them from flaring all over the place, you know, if you don't have them to get together. So like you say, it comes down to the trim, but then you go to put a shoe on them. Like where in the shoe, like, is the hardest part, you think, of like getting the shoe on the horse?
I think it is the fitting, you know, understanding the shape of the white line is going to be dictating your shape of your shoe. You know, if you can fit your shoe to the shape of the white line, I mean, you can nail up that shoe with your eyes closed. It doesn't matter. Like a monkey can do it. You know. So
then it comes down to like trying to do that though. Is like you gotta understand the horn, huh?
Yep. You got to understand the horn, and you just got to understand like the arcs of the foot. Like, I definitely have heard a couple sayings that Craig's have said to me over the years that have made massive impressions. Like one of them was like we were talking about, like the trims, like you don't got to take it all today. You're going to be back in 6 weeks. If you left it a little bit long this time, you'll know next time, you know? And when he said that, I was like, man, what the hell? That was so simple, dude. You know?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with like the arcs of the foot. Like I think that there's three transitions in the foot, you know, the extensor process and the bridge. You know, they're in the bone, they're in the arcs, they're in the foot. And so if you start to go to and from your arcs to the bridge, man, it just sorts a lot of things out.
So is that what you're thinking about when you see a foot and like you're heading to the anvil, is just how you're going to break that shape down?
Yep. Well, in my trim, so like when I'm trimming it and I'm running my rasp and I'm shaping the foot from the bottom and the top, I'm always trying to think of where those transitions are. And not trying to move them, but trying to make them flow from one to the next, because it's just one arc connecting the two. And so if you don't put any kinks or straight spots in it, it's a lot easier to just create an arc to and from them and then duplicate it at the horn. You know, that sounds simple to do, you know?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And doing it's completely
you're just
different.
like, just arc.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to like
just
picture
arcs,
it in my
just
head
arc
as you're
from-
explaining it.
But so like when you're working the shoe on the horn and stuff, like you're either working to the arc or away from the arc. So when you start thinking about it like in transitions and force yourself to go out to a quarter and back in and have an extensor process in your shape, like they just start to come around stronger and they nail up easier and the foot is just so much more pleasant to be around.
So do you think that is a little bit of you are just forging evenly, or since you're shaping evenly on the horn? That you're not going from just one direction. Like, so do you hold the shoe by the heel and forge back to the toe and stuff like that to forge to and from?
Yeah, Craig pointed that out. I can't remember when. It was a while ago. I can't remember how it happened or what was going on, but like we were talking about transitions and flow of the foot, and he was saying that he noticed a lot of guys, high-end guys that were like Austin would, forge from the heel to the toe and clean things up. And so that's all I needed to hear. You know what I mean? Like if you tell me that, Austin Edens, does a heel this way, it's enough backing for me to like, I got to see it. I got to try it. I got to, you know what I mean? Like he's a wicked handy guy. So,
oh, he's the man. Yeah.
Yeah. So like when I started playing with that, it confused me at first more than it helped me, but the more I did it, the more I understood it and what you can do with it. And then it just, because we always work our rasp from the quarter to the toe, but everybody only ever works on the horn from the toe to the heel.
Well, and it's funny because you can like watch a guy, right, like forging, and he's struggling to get the shape, and he's just keeps going from the same spot just over and over again. And so, like, it's interesting for me to hear that you kind of struggled with it at the beginning, because I would think that you would pick it up really quickly, because I feel like, and maybe you didn't then, but it's like I feel like right now you have a super good understanding of like basic blacksmithing, working each side.
Yeah. Forging 180 degrees.
Yeah, and that's like, I guess that's what it comes down to for me, like on the horn, is like I don't belong in any group. I'm just like a wanderer, I feel like sometimes. And so it's like my blacksmith mind kicks in, and I'm like, that's all I'm doing is just working the other side, like from the other way. I can't work from the inside of the shoe, so this is the only way you can work that other diagonal.
And like the reason I say that it was kind of frustrating and confusing in the beginning is like when you start doing that move, you don't necessarily see a result from it. And you can't figure out if it's worth doing or not doing, and or if you're wanting to make a big change, how do you go about making a big change, working it from the quarter to the toe? You know what I mean?
It's like I'm going through the motions, but I'm not necessarily seeing the result yet.
Exactly. And then you can't do that for very long before you quit doing that action, right? And so the more I did it, the more I started paying attention to being able to see the result from it. And then once I did it long enough where I saw the result, it was hard. I just can't not do it now.
Do you think it helped too? Of like, do you think your tongs got better? Like your tong hand got better doing that move? Because that's where that move is hard. Was like took me a really long time to learn.
Yep. To be honest, it was probably paying attention to the tongs and manipulating the tongs to make it do what I wanted. I thought it was the hammer doing it that way, but it was like it's the same as the other way, working from the toe to the heel. It's the tongs that do all the work. So I just became a lot more aware of where my tongs were and where the air gap was on the horn to allow it to be able to make the change.
That's huge, I think, of like a lot of foraging is paying attention where the air gap is what it's where you actually are in contact with the horn is like that's where it comes. Like you watch guys make tongs, and like that's usually when they fuck up making the offset on a pair of tongs, putting the S bend in, is they don't have an air gap on the other side as they're forging. Yeah,
you can't expect it to go somewhere when it's got nowhere to go.
Yeah,
I mean that sounds really simple.
No, but it is kind of just that. I guess it is that simple when it comes down to it. So
that's where I would say like blacksmiths are better at at understanding things and doing things like that than farriers are, because blacksmiths are pretty much like, all right, do this, and it produces this, and they just do it. They don't have to have some in-depth conversation about it. You know what I mean?
No, I think you're right. So like a horseshoer has a hard time having a move. Mm-hmm. It's like, so it's that's super funny to me that you said that. So it's like, I was thinking it just the other day, and it was like, I'm going to do a demo at the winter clinic, and my demo is going to be on steel moving to and from the hammer. Like that's what I want to do. Yeah. And it's funny because horseshoers will not pay attention to just a concept or a move of one shoe. They'll learn it. They'll learn how to do it. And then you'll go to another shoe and they're like, well, I don't know how to make that shoe. It's like, well, you've done all of these elements before. You just have to put them together. Like you just have to like grab them from each one. So I think you're right. Is like blacksmiths will like, well, that's just kind of a leaf. You just didn't do this part. That's just kind of this. And like they can break it down into a part system. And so is that how you look at new shoes when you get like a shoe that you've never made before?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you just look at what the elements are. Like a good example is the caulk and feather that we had to make for the specialty forging. It didn't get picked this year, but it's a trailered caulking with a ramped up wedge. I've made ramped up wedges and trailered caulkins before and stuff like that, but never that exact shoe. So I just took the pieces that I know how to make and what I have to do with them and just put them together. And the first one, you know, might not come to size or be a little rough looking, but it comes together within a shoe or two, you know, pretty quick.
I think that's where a lot of people too are like afraid to make that first move where like you just said, you're like, you just got to make that first one to have a mark. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, shooting a gun for the first time. You got to at least put one down range to see where you're hitting at, you know, just try to, and then adjust from there.
Yeah. But and nobody's going to laugh at you if you don't hit the paper plate on the mark, you know, but for whatever reason in the shoeing world, everybody thinks that somebody's going to get, you know, made fun of for making a shitter. Like anybody that's good at making shoes has made a pile of shitters.
Well, and like, here's a big news flash for everybody. Don't fucking post the first one. Don't do it. Don't even ask the question. Send it. Maybe like if you want to send it to somebody, send it to one buddy or something like that, a message. But don't post it for everybody. No. Make 4 or 5 more. Just like just keep going. Like, because it's gonna be like. So do you still have that happen to you now, where you try a first shoe and you're like, I'm gonna hide that one. That one's not that great.
Yeah, like some of the shoes that I made practicing for convention. I mean, they're shitters. Like they're twisted up, mangled up pieces of shit that I just was either trying something or figuring out measurements on, and like, who cares? Like, I don't give a shit. Like
I remember
I learned something from it.
I remember when I came to your shop a couple years ago. And on your water bucket there, you had a bunch of shoes laying there, like practice shoes that you'd made. And I picked one up, and I was like, oh, that's fairly decent. And you're like, it's like the first one I ever made. And it was, like, nicer than the shoes that I had been making to this point, where there's, like, 10 of them I'd made. So it's not really that big of a, like, shitter mangled up, you know?
Yeah.
But
I mean, one man's shitter might not be another man's shitter, but...
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so now you guys have got a pretty good damn team together at this point. How excited are you about that?
I'm really excited. It'll be good. It's kind of been in the works a little bit. You know, obviously we all had to do the team trials and stuff, and you know, me, Bodie, and Money definitely wanted to pair up and kind of stack it, I guess you could say. We weren't sure who was going to make the fourth one. We had a pretty good idea. It was either going to be Daniel, Sawyer, or Brian, or Adam, you know, through the process. So all those guys are handy in their own right, and they're all good, super good dudes. And so it didn't, you know, it's kind of one of those spots where Daniel was able to get there, and I'm glad he did, because, I mean, me and him have been joking about doing a team together for a long time. And so it's awesome that it's finally come together, and It's a team that I feel like probably has a lot of pressure on it in the sense of to do good, but at the same time, like we just had a practice last weekend, and I mean, there's pressure to do good, but like I don't feel like there's pressure to do good any more than there's pressure to do good that I put on myself. You know,
that's what I was just gonna say. I don't think there's any more outside pressure than there is inside pressure. Of like all you guys are all very self accountable and self motivating. Like that, it's I wouldn't say. I guess I was off to say like, oh yeah, there's pressure on you guys. I would say like for like especially I can speak for myself is like there's hope for you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
this is like, man, this is pretty cool. Like, this is because you guys have had good teams together before. You know, it's like you, Money, Robert, and Lamar were all on a team, and like you guys were a pretty good flowing team.
Yeah, yeah. The cool part about that team was, I would honestly say that probably all four of us learned more those 2 years than any other point in our forging careers, because of the grind that we did in those 2 years and the type of practices that we produced. Like it was nothing about, or it was only about getting better. There was no ego. There was no issues ever. It was always push harder, dig deeper, do better, you know? So
that's super hard. And everybody says that's what they want to do until they show up at a practice and someone tells
time to do it.
Yeah, and it's like, I like, you're just that type of person though. Anyways, like even yourself like, I imagine you're doing that when you're riding your snowmobile. That you're kind of pushing yourself nonstop. Like that's
massively.
Yeah,
yeah,
easy to do in a practice setting.
Yeah, and when I started shoeing, I was taking horses on the side and training them, breaking colts and doing some stuff, and I even noticed myself doing that with them a lot because like I would always look at them and what they could teach me. You know, what can this sorrel teach me, and then what could this paint horse teach me? And as long as I learned something from them when I had them in my custody, I felt like it was a mutual beneficial deal. They got taught something and I got taught something. And it's the same thing with the competing and the blacksmithing. Like we compete because we want to win, but I'm also just on a constant seeking journey to get more knowledge and become better at shoeing horses, to be more efficient, to do a better job by the horse for the client, you know?
So what goals are you seeing for yourself right now then that you're working on in the competition world?
I want to continue kind of doing what I was doing before COVID, I guess, to be honest. Like COVID was a weird scenario for the world, but at the same time it kind of hit my world in like the perfect timing. I was planning on taking a step away from competing a little bit. I went hard, you know, from 2012 to 2019. And
I remember you telling me that, like, we're going to take time and I'm going to spend time with my wife.
Yep.
You know, take a year and just do her things.
Yep. And we did, and it was weird because like our world really didn't change that much. Like I still went and shot horses. I just saw less people, which was great. And my wife works remote. And so her job, nothing changed. Everything was steady. So like our world pretty much didn't have any ripple in it. And then the best part about it is, you know, everything got quiet. There was no clinics, there was no contests, there was no things to do. So I had some stuff that was on the books to have to go do, judging and clinic wise, that got canceled. And so I went from the longest period of time where I was home, I think was like 6 weekends in a row or 5 weekends in a row for years, to I think I stayed home for like a year and a couple months straight.
Because of COVID and you couldn't go nowhere.
Yeah, well, because there was nothing that was calling me to go do, you know?
Yeah.
So I just went up.
So what did you guys do to like fill that time then?
Yeah, so like we spent a bunch of time. We like ironically right in the beginning of COVID bought a Can-Am side by side and a camper. You know, we just went up and explored old gold mines and ghost towns and silver mines. You know, it was
Yeah.
cool. So
Something must be harassing Riley out there in the
Yeah.
trailer.
yeah,
I had to go pee. Sorry, guys. I've been drinking my
Oh.
coffee.
We thought someone was banging on the trailer door out there or something.
No, it's all quiet here tonight. Not too much
So
excitement.
did you guys? So when you and your wife were out there, it's something that's interested me. Is like I want to go like see some old mines and stuff. Did you guys like find a bunch of those and like get to
so
walk
many.
back in them?
Oh yeah, so
Really?
many dudes. So like, there was one that we found that was really cool, that was really big, and it had 3 entrances to it. And we went to one the first time, and I went back probably about a mile and a half straight back in the shaft.
Oh shit!
And
Where was this at?
just here in Montana, about probably
Oh, okay.
hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes from the house. And went back there and explored a little bit, and then came out, and then at a different time we found a shaft that went in from the bottom, and it had like a 300-foot wooden ladder that connected to that shaft that we were in before. And so
Did you guys go up it?
Oh hell yeah.
Oh, so it was still intact and
Well,
safe
yeah,
enough, I
close
guess.
enough, yeah. But just
Yeah,
that kind of
that's
stuff
cool.
is fun, like that old industrial equipment and era. You know, all that stuff was in the late
yeah.
1800s, early 1900s.
Mhm.
There was a lot of silver mines in Montana in the late 1800s before the silver industry kind of, fell through the floor,
Yeah.
So, but just something different, something non-horse related.
So you guys just got to go be together and,
Yep.
take off from the world essentially, through
Yep.
COVID, and it almost was perfect timing for you in that sense.
Yep. And then obviously the biggest scare I had was, coming back into the arena. Did I get, rusty, stupid,
Yeah.
forget a bunch of stuff,
Suffer. Yeah.
but it doesn't appear to be that way too much.
Yeah,
I think everybody kind of worries about that if they take like a little bit of time off, like how bad am I going to be? Am
Yep.
I going to still be all right?
Yep.
Almost as like a form of not necessarily retirement, but like you hear these like professional athletes or whatever take some time off, and then like that's their biggest fear is like why they come back is like, oh, am I going to be as good or not?
Yeah. Did the game change?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't too long for you, but it's like, so at this point, like, you're probably just wanting to hone things up. It seems like then on your own,
Oh yeah,
for
definitely.
yourself and on this team of like what you guys are working on is pretty much just like we're
Yep.
working on big things, but it's like for you
Yep.
guys though, it's probably pretty. So like you guys had your first practice this last weekend. How did that go?
It went good, went smooth. Like, obviously 3 of our corners we've been doing for the last year. Me, Money, and Bodie have been on the same corners and doing the exact same thing. And Daniel is experienced and savvy, and he'd been on the left front before, so it just made sense to put him on the left front. And he was in a spot where he wanted to maybe lead off, and so we tried that, and we just kept him there. And so the beauty with this team of having so much experience, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. We know the system, and we know what system works, and now we just got to implement it.
So like this weekend, you guys just did pretty much the same go each time. Then like you didn't have any big changes to it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the same discipline, like you just
No.
did the same discipline all weekend?
Discipline stayed the same, but like Daniel led off, I trimmed second, and then Money, and then Bodie, and Bodie's anchor. So like at any given time, somebody can jump somebody if shit hits the fan. But the idea is to know the choreograph so well that the end result halfway through the go. If you're going to be tight on time, if you're not tight on time, and if you're not tight on time, where to be able to put some of that time to make the product better.
That first run, are you guys running the clock to like see where it's at, or you just kind of leisurely just going through it, or you have a set time like we need to get done at the 2 hour or 2.5 hour mark, like we have to be done, or you just kind of have it in the back of your mind and just kind of seeing where you're at?
No, so the way I saw it was that we're all experienced enough. There's no time to waste on just doing a horse. Like,
right.
So the first go that we did, I think the first go we did was roadster horse. Yeah, it was a roadster horse, and we did it in 2 hours. So like whenever we do a practice go, we always cut a half hour off for the judging. Mm-hmm. So like for the team competitions that Craig put on last year, the Pennsylvania and North Carolina one, all the practice goes we would do in an hour and a half, you know, because they're 2 hour goes, you know, so like, because then at that point, the judge is not going to take full half hour to do their work. You hope they don't.
You're getting extra time.
So essentially it's a grace period for yourself.
Exactly.
Then.
So if you can do it in less time on the day, you'll be, you know, adrenaline up a little bit. You'll get even more time.
So speaking in the past of like, so you guys had the team Minute Steel so like your guys' practices, did your guys' goes at the competition, were they always like your practices, or does shit still happen?
No, shit still happened. You know, Brian made the wrong side draft shoe in North Carolina. But the fact that we practiced that go in a short period of time and stuff,
you were able to accommodate.
Exactly. It was a really good thing because like he made a whole second. So he didn't realize that he made the wrong side shoe until he went to fit, and he'd already rasped out the front half of the shoe.
Oh,
and so
God damn.
He goes to fit, and he's like, "Why isn't my hot fitters on the inside?" And so then he realized it, right? But it was amazing because it was so early in the class still. He made another shoe, knocked it out, and it was a good quality shoe, and still had time to fit it and put it on there, and there was still time on the clock to be able to do a good finish job. And so we might not have won that day, but we didn't get, you know, 4th or 5th. We only got 2nd.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that's crucial. So
yeah, especially for trying to get the overall of the weekend.
Yeah. So like, and the big part with that too is it shines on the system that we do for our practicing is like, if something does hit the fan on the day, we have it built in to be able to still finish the class strong. And that's the whole game plan. Because you never have that perfect go where there's no problems.
No.
Man.
Something can always happen.
Yeah.
The whole entire that's what I was wondering. It's like you guys have these. I'm sure your practices are just so smooth and nice. And then or is it sometimes the practices aren't as smooth and nice?
I don't know. Sometimes the practices are rough. Like this weekend, like there was probably only one or two horses out of the 5 we did that there wasn't multiple people that were like, I need to take 2 stretch heats. Right?
Really?
Oh. And it's not like that's like a massive big deal, but it takes time, right? Like you didn't go to the foot and you're the right size right from the get-go. The beauty with having skills and experiences is like whatever is wrong with the shoe when you go to the foot, you know what to do to make it what you want it to be. You know?
So do you think that comes from, because I'm sure each guy knows his measurements. It wasn't like it was a big shocker there. So is it like, for me, this is like, and I'm not even close to your experiences, like when I work with a striker, my teammate for the first time, I'm like shy to have him get after my steel reel like a whole bunch. Do you think that's kind of where it comes from? It's just like trying to feel each other out?
Yeah, it could have been a little bit. I think honestly we're shooting for the perfect size, right? Yeah, so when I say we need to stretch a little bit, it's not that it didn't cover. It's not that it's just not that perfect fit. So like our goal, whenever we give the judge something to look at, we don't want them to say anything or put their finger on anything, because that's giving them a reason to knock points off you, right? But if everything's down the middle where they can't say it's too short fit, too long fit, too wide fit, too tight fit, and they just like
it's almost like a snowball effect.
Exactly. So like as soon as you see the judge start to put their finger on something, say your trim, and you see him touch your frog, well, there goes points like, every time they touch it. Boom. Yeah. And for whatever reason, like something that you did they didn't like. But if you just always play that middle ground where it's not, like I said, not too long but not too short, then it slides through and you just gain all those points.
And that comes from experiences of knowing where the middle ground is, though. Huh?
Exactly. And
so,
it's hard to learn.
So when you're going to trim a foot, like let's say there's not anything weird with this foot. It's just you're at a contest. How do you go about it? What do you want your frog to look like? Your bars to look like? Like what's in your mind?
To me, I want everything to be to look intentional, to not look overdone, and I want it to look like it's been set up for the next step. So when I trim a foot, I want that trimmed foot to look like it's set up, that there's a shoe coming into it, the next phase. And so then it shows intent that the foot is getting shod. It shows intent that I didn't take too much foot. I still left some foot to burn, but yet I didn't trim my foot and leave sole pressure where I have to touch it after I burn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I want everything to kind of look nice and soft, but look intentional.
Yeah, and you want to have that nice 1/8 of an inch or so rim, I guess, or 3/16 rim of burn material. Yep. But it's like, so how do you know where you want your bars to end? How do you know when trimming your frogs too much, or not enough? Like,
a lot of that kind of stuff too is like, I feel like there's a few key questions that you can ask your judge if you're able to talk to your judge, or if the judge can look at your foot, right? And one of those is just to ask, you don't want to be like, well, do you want me to trim it or not trim it? Do you want me to touch it or not touch it? Because that's so vague, right? Just find out whether or not he likes a trimmed up frog or he doesn't like a trimmed up frog. You don't have to be so point blank where you're like, well, do I touch this or not touch this, right? And so getting it where you touch things where it makes it look like your knife didn't touch it, you know what I mean? So that it looks intentional, but not like scalped or gouged or cupped or a bunch of lines through it. And so even if it's not where they like it to be, it's done so well that they can't argue with it that much.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, because it's like, I've always thought it's like, man, like a really nice foot almost looks like it was sandblasted.
Exactly. Like right now, actually, to be honest, like the soles right now in the snow, they're washed out from the snow.
Yeah.
But they're not overwashed out, and they're beautiful. Like you do a disservice to them by touching them, you know?
Yeah. And so do you keep that in mind when you're like, when you see a foot like that, you're like, I'm going to try to aim for this a little bit with my trims.
Exactly.
Of this pretty foot, you know?
Exactly. So like when a frog, when a frog exfoliates on its own in the spring and the fall, when it exfoliates and you didn't touch it and it looks like a sensitive frog, that's what you should shoot for every time you touch a frog with your knife, in my opinion.
No, and that's why I wanted to get your opinion on it, because you've gone to a lot of places and done well, because I think, like, you know how to shoot for the middle of the road. Like, you could probably not talk to the judge, and you're probably pretty confident in what you're going to do there. Where, like, I go to a contest, I'm like, I need to talk to somebody. I need some help here. Like, what do I? I'm the dude asking that vague questions. Like, want me to trim that or not? Like, you gotta tell me. Leave it in my pocket or don't leave it.
Yeah. Like I don't know. Like I feel like a well-shod foot on a horse is a well-shod foot anywhere in the world, and a poorly shod one is a poor shod one anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I would agree with that, and it's like. Each person kind of knows it, I think, while they're in the middle of the contest. They're like, this isn't that great. This isn't going well.
Yeah, and you get surprised sometimes where you think you may have overdone it, and then you get a good trim score. You know, the opinion's not the same of your job as you thought it was, you know, or vice versa. Sometimes you thought you just knocked it out of the park, and then you get, knocked down a peg or two.
Yeah, because we're so caught up in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. I would think. And so it's like, have you noticed that about yourself? Like, you are way more, and I'm sure, I think it could relate to anything of like hunting, buck fever type deal. It was like when you were a cat 1, it's a little bit of you black out in the middle of your go, right? Compared to now. Do you feel fully aware?
Yeah, I mean, I felt pretty aware in cat 1. Like, stuff would happen in cat 1 where at the end of the go, I'd be like, why did I not do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just the time management maybe a little bit better. And then also just understanding how to be able to make the go happen in the way that you want it to go. Like, make it your go. Don't let the go run you. You run the go. And that goes with the striker too.
What do you mean by that? Like, make
like controlling him?
Category 1. well, not controlling them, but just communicating. So like category ones and
yeah.
novice, like usually don't have the confidence to be able to tell their striker, no, that's a shit heat. Put that back in the fire and give me a better heat. Give me a heat that's in the center of my toe, not lopsided. Because you give me a lopsided heat at that skill level, and my toe bend's going to be lopsided. And
but then how do you like correct that with yourself? So now you're like having to stick it back in the fire, and it's taking more time. So then it might like screw with your head too. So it's like now you're getting the double-sided thing. Like, oh shit, I just told him it's not right, but now it's taking more time. Do I go dink with my shoe that I'm working on now, or do I just sit here and wait?
Like for like that example, like you're going to put it back in the fire for 20 seconds maybe and center up your heat. 20 seconds on the front end is way better than a whole extra heat at the end when you got to fix your toe bend because your whole shoe's wonky. True. You know what I mean? So like you're gonna fight
it every heat.
Exactly. And so you got to have that. You got to have that conversation with yourself in your own head and be like, no, this is the right thing to do. Because it's going to save.
And so,
you time.
Do you still do that when you're practicing by yourself? Like, that was hard for me. So it's like that's one thing I've been working on with like this team that I'm on right now. It's like being a better teammate and a better communicator and more aware of what's going and like having better systems. Yeah. And so I can be a better teammate. Like, is that something you work on then as a team? Like, what you're going to tell your striker?
Yeah, and like to me, like the biggest thing is knowing what you're expecting from the striker. Like. When I have a striker step in, I want them to do a specific task. And if they don't perform that specific task, I'll stop them in the middle of it and be like, dude, okay, this is what you need to be doing right now, and this is what you are doing. So you need to stop doing that, and you need to do this, or I'm just going to do it myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super hard because it's like – that's one reason it keeps me from getting an employee most of the time. It's like I don't think I'm there of like being able to communicate somebody. I know I just end up doing it by myself and paying this guy to watch me do it.
The beauty of having the striker is the fact that it saves some of the effort in your body, and the sharper you are in your energy, the sharper your eyes are going to be. And so the more you can have the striker do, it benefits you to be able to be more consistent throughout the whole time and cognitive. And so I think using the striker is definitely important, but definitely telling them what you're expecting them to do is crucial too, you know.
And so I think also something that's really hard as a Cat 1 that you could talk on that I'm sure you have a great understanding is understanding the difference of what's going to happen to the forging coming from when you do it compared to when they do it.
As in like the competitor versus the striker?
No, as in like pushing and pulling. You know,
how the material moves.
Yes. And tools.
Yeah, so like to me, like the word like your talk is going to be at the winter clinic, you know, steel coming to the hammer. It's to me, the more material that you forge on and move on an anvil, the better understanding you get to where it goes. The more rectangled the section is, the more you flatten it, the more it stays rectangled. The more square the section is, the more you flatten it, the more it stays square, but it just gets longer. You know, just simple examples like that, right? And so same thing with bumping. Depending on how you bump is going to determine where the material goes. You know, so like if your swing is pushing or pulling, it's going to push it to the far side or pull it towards the near side. And so little things like that, the more you understand and just watch the material move through the process, the better you get a grasp of it, you know, because it's in every aspect.
And it changes, like, so it's like, it's going to change depending on how heavy of a hammer hits it.
Yep.
You know, like you talking about, like, if it's already square and you flatten it, it's going to stay square and get longer. Well, it might not. It's going to be different than if it's flattened with a 2-pound hammer compared to a 10-pound hammer.
Exactly. A
2-pound hammer is going to flash it more than a 10-pound hammer is going to flash it. And so it's like, at this point in your shoemaking, it's a ton of blacksmithing then, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I feel like all horseshoers would benefit from spending a lot of time on a press and a power hammer, because
Oh my gosh.
you're not having to exert energy and you can just observe, and you get to watch something else move the material for you. And the learning curve on those machines is phenomenal. And just going from those two machines, they move material completely different. And you wouldn't think
That's why I get
but it
excited
does.
when I get to go to Riley's.
Yeah.
I get to try it
And
out a
rightfully
little bit.
so. Yeah, rightfully so.
Things are so, yeah, man, no, like going to power hammers and presses changed my whole entire thought process on shoemaking.
Yep.
Completely. And it is, and like, just like with that of like, I know if I'm bumping, I'm going to get more bump into the center of that steel if I use a heavier hammer than a lighter hammer, just on physics. And that's just how steel moves and how stuff is carried throughout the steel. And like of knowing that a lighter hammer is going to flash more than a heavier hammer. Yeah, I do think, because you don't get that, we don't hit hard enough to watch steel move.
Yeah.
By ourselves compared to a press or a power hammer.
Not enough to see it noticeably per blow.
No. We're like, man, like at least my power hammer, I can feel it change in the tongs. You know?
Oh,
like
yeah.
It's pretty big. It's a lot at one time. Like it's
Felt that a couple times and it scared the shit out of me.
Why are my tongs getting
Tongs
bigger?
get jerked out of your hands.
Yeah.
Gavin went to go drive the I drift for the first time in a hammer, and it just went all the way. Just the whole bullet right through the hammer.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's got a little more ass there.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you notice
quick,
that?
though.
Do you notice that you pick which machine you use depending on what you're wanting the material to do, whether you use a press or a power hammer?
Oh yeah, yeah, completely.
Like
that's
the characteristics of what they do, you use it to your advantage.
Yep. Yeah, a power hammer is sticky, a press is sticky. Like you can do moves on a press that you can't do on the power hammer, and like a press is an impression machine. It is good at impressing things in. It is not a drawing machine, where a power hammer is a drawing machine because it hits so hard and and it's fast, and it's not staying in contact for a long time.
Yep.
But no, it's just of like what you're comfortable with, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of guys that punch eyes on their power hammers, and it probably would be smart for me to do that sometimes. I'm a chicken. I'm used to the press.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm sure if I got a new press too, I would suck at punching eyes for a little bit on the new press, because my press is so crooked at this point. I probably shouldn't say that in case I want to sell one day.
You just adapted to it though.
Oh yeah. It's everybody that comes over. I'm like, well, when you think that center, just move it over a little bit, because it's gonna pull that way. It's a little off.
Yeah, definitely.
It was like you've gotten into quite a bit of that. It's like you've made presses, power hammers, and quite a bit of stuff. Do you still have? I know you sold your press, right?
Yeah. So like at the moment, I don't have a press. I sold the power hammer. Well, I sold the press because I was going to build another one. I wanted to do an electronics over hydraulics to have more control and to set limit switches. And I bought a new to me power hammer last summer, or 2 summers ago, I should say. It's a Saymax 60 kilogram.
Yep.
And it was just a couple hours away from the house, like brand new, had like 30 hours on it
good
only.
hammers.
Yeah, so like I jumped on it, and that's kind of why I sold the hammer that I had built. After selling it, they both have their places though. Like I could have definitely kept that hammer, because that hammer was super quiet when I wasn't using it, because it didn't idle, right? It was a Kenyan style utility hammer.
And could you change the beats per minute on the on the one you made?
Yeah, I could slow them down
or speed it up.
Yep. So you could like there was a valve on the back side of the manifold that you could taper down the exhaust, so it couldn't cycle the air super fast, so it would slow your beats per minute down. So you could get more control if you wanted to do like a top tool and just have it smack every 2 or 3 seconds, you know? But the thing that I noticed,
for making pans.
Yes,
You could
exactly.
speed it up a bunch. It'd be like a
Yep.
little plenishing hammer.
Exactly. But so like the biggest thing to me was like your hammer, when you turn it on and let it warm up, you just got to get used to it just sitting there idling and just running.
It's a goddamn freight
Dude.
train sitting there
Yeah,
the whole time.
When we go to shut it off, I'm like, oh, thank God. Now I can think, because it's like constantly just going
Yeah.
like white noise in the back of your head,
Yep.
just like loud. And
One,
I'm
like,
like,
I'm
oh,
sure-
God,
I'm
I can
sure
think
with-
again.
With you, Riley, like when you first started using it, you're like, well, it's running. I better be using it.
Oh my gosh.
So
Dude,
you
it
like you
gave
get
me
like
anxiety.
yeah, same with me. And so like
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I got to turn it off when I'm not using it in between heats. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like now it's not going when I need it. So you just get used to it running. But that utility hammer that I had made, it was awesome because like unless your foot was pressed on the pedal, it didn't do anything. But it was ready at the second that you did it.
They are. I didn't really know that about them. You know what I mean? Like I kind of knew they could be on and not making noise, but it's like
Yeah.
when we were at Wellshot, I went walking up to the big blue
Yep.
they got there, and I'm like looking around, kind of fucking with it. And I like touched the treadle and it fired off because it was on.
loud.
Yeah, it just wham! I was like, oh shit! Like, I'm the one guy. Probably everybody
Yeah.
thought like, oh, he won't get hurt by that thing.
Yeah.
Like I almost lost my damn finger.
Yeah. Had one loaded in the chamber, did that?
Oh yeah, I think it was ready to go. That's at least the nice thing about like a regular hammer, a self-contained. They're like,
Yeah.
that thing's on. Like
Yeah,
you might
you
not want to
know.
be near.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have problems with your Samex starting in the cold?
No, it's super good. Like it runs well. Like I just used Money's last week, and he's got a 50 kilogram, and they're just good hammers. They have super control and sensitivity, and
Yep.
like my shop isn't like super cold. Like it's insulated and has a heater in it. The heater doesn't run all the time, but like
Okay,
the coldest it gets in there is 35, 40 degrees. You know?
that's
Yeah.
not too bad.
Yeah. So it's not too bad.
That's what mine. The other day, it took me an hour to get mine started
Really?
because it was just so cold. Yeah, and I still got like a little residual summertime oil in it.
Oh, sure.
And so it's still a little thick, and so like
Yep.
I have to pull every orifice on the damn thing so it has no compression pretty much.
Just to get it to spin over.
Get it rolling and then start adding compression back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was there,
plugging holes.
when I was there like a month or so ago, and it was like 18 degrees out in the morning, and like it fires up like a Cummins diesel, where it's like slow at first, and it's like woo woo woo, and
Yeah,
all of a
yeah.
sudden, like as it starts warming up, it gets faster and faster and faster, and I was like, you just need to add a train whistle to this thing, and like
Exactly.
be like chugga 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 woo woo.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds just like that.
So you guys got this team going right now. Is that pretty much your biggest thing you got going then right now? Is taking
Yeah,
this
that's-
team, going to this team all the way to Stoneleigh?
Yeah, this is a massive priority in my life this year. And like I said, it's been something that's been in the works for a little while. Like I talked to my wife probably about a year and a half ago and told her that I wanted to maybe do another team and maybe jump on the AFT with specific people. And if it worked out, it worked out. If it didn't, it didn't. But I was hoping that it would, and it did. And
Yeah.
I am 100% on board to do whatever I need to do, as much as I need to do to make it so that it's a winning team. You know?
That's sweet.
How do you think you're going to do it just for this year, and then kind of be? What's your plans for the future?
We'll kind of play it by ear, I think.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
maybe if you don't accomplish what you do, then next year you're gonna be like, well, we got to get redemption.
yes,
If
and
that's
like,
a scenario, then.
and a lot of it, I mean, when you're on a team scenario, it's not just your goal or plan on what's going on. Like if Bodie and Money and Daniel came up to me tomorrow and were like, we're gonna do this for another year, I'd immediately say yes. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I'm not saying that I wouldn't do it if they didn't do it next year. It's just, kind of early in the year. But if we make it the team that we want and make it do what we want it to do, then, hopefully we could maybe do that 2 years in a row or something.
Yeah. No, yeah, because it's kind of one of those things like the first year, like everybody will, you don't want anybody thinking it was a fluke.
Yeah, exactly. That was,
Like,
to be honest, that was my biggest fear with winning my first national title. Is that was the easy part. Now I got to do it again.
That's exactly what Money said.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Bodie
Yep.
has told me the same exact thing. So it's
Yep.
pretty cool to see you guys all together and pushing together. And something of like selfishly that I wanted to ask you about is like, how much are you still finding out about tools and tooling that you're using and when you're making horseshoes and stuff? And how much are you still changing those things? And what are some things that you've like recently discovered that you were like, man, I was overlooking this, or like something like that?
Yeah, like I would say probably over the last year or two, like one of the things that I noticed, which I guess wouldn't say is new, but it has some validity behind it, is the fullers. Like the longer the fuller, the more life in the fuller, the more skill it takes to run it the way you want to run it. The shorter the fuller, the more you can just beat that thing into the shoe and it goes perfect every time. But then it doesn't have very much life. So the fuller that you really like to use dies sooner than not. So there's kind of a give and take with that fuller, right? Like you see some fullers that people are making, they're really long, but they have more life. And then you see other fullers that are really short, compact little units, and they drive sweet right from the get-go, but they ain't going to drive sweet for very long because they're going to get wore up.
And even those long ones, they aren't sweet until
you find their sweet spot,
and they're almost ground down.
Yep, you got to find the sweet spot.
That's something I noticed about. That's interesting. So it's like I noticed that about Brian Brazil's tooling for making hammers. Everything is very short and compact. Yep. It looks like it's almost more. It's very close to the handle.
Yep.
So do you think that's mostly just in top tools? Because like in hammers, I've noticed difference. I like reach in the hammers.
Yeah, I would agree. I like reach in the hammer. Like I use the Jim Poor, I guess the long nose Jim Poor, like the it's kind of like a classic looking one, but it's like 5 inches or more from face to face.
Yeah, inch and 5/8 around faces. I think
like I really truly like those hammers, the feel of them. And like I remember being on the team with Andrew Wells, and he's got really good eye in finding really cool, unique tools and from tool makers. And we had a conversation, and I was like, man, all those hammers, all the tools that he has are sweet. The thing that I don't like is the fact that when I break them, I can't replace them. So when I pick up a tool that I'm going to be using for competing on and just beating the hell out of, when I break it, I want to just make a phone call and make that thing feel right at home, right back in my hand again.
I was going to say, that's the thing. Like it's coming like I make handmade things, and it's like, if you break one of mine, I'll remake it for you.
Yeah, but it's not identical.
No, it's like, dude, like even like I'll rehandle one of my hammers, and I'm like, oh.
It's not the same.
Not the same. It's not there. Yeah. It's like, man, I don't like you as much anymore.
And like I said, I use those Jim Poor hammers, and I love them, and they're great. But I've broke 3 of the 2-pounders. I've snapped the flat.
I was just about to ask how many of you broke.
I've snapped 3 of the flat faces right clean off.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And like you're saying, it's like and that's coming like it's you understand that a lot of people, some people, they're not going to work a hammer as hard as you can to get it that fragile to where the thing's been worked hard and it's going to break. But it's like when you swing a hammer that hard and that often, something's going to happen to it sooner or later.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the tool's fault. Like it's just a matter of like that's just what's going to happen eventually.
Yep, and same with tongs. Like they're eventually going to snap somewhere, or something's going to happen, and it's an understanding that all tools have a life. Like all tools have a life.
Yeah. And but even so, like you have a pretty good understanding though of what you like and what to make it feel comfortable.
Yep.
And so, like, do you have to alter the hammers at all when you get them, like the faces? Is there a certain thing you look for in a hammer face that you kind of like, or you just got used to that Jim Poor, how
drive it and use it?
Yeah, I've got like the Jim Poor one. I just grab and use. Like, even the handles, they're a little bit scant for me, so I usually wrap them with like an air cushion type wrap. It's not super tacky, but it takes a lot of the vibration out of my elbow. And so it just feels good. And like when you get a miss blow, it doesn't tweak you too bad. And so
Yeah. It's talking about snapping flat faces off.
Yeah, exactly. and so like those hammers I can just grab and use, but like I always want the flat side to not be perfectly flat or cupped. I want it to be slightly domed, to be forgiving, soft edges. Yep, exactly. Like same thing with the sledgehammer. If you just pick up some random big sledgehammer, you want it forgiving. You know, you don't want it to leave big pucker marks in the shoe.
So I heard a really smart blacksmith guy that he was like, he might not be that smart, but this part he said was pretty genius. So he was like, it needs to be pillowed as much as it can go in depth.
Sure.
So a 2-pound hammer can only probably, if you hit something, it can only go 1/8 of an inch. So it needs to have at least of a 3/16 of a pillow so it doesn't dent. Yep. And so like a sledgehammer will need more pillow because it can go deeper with its swing.
That dude thought about it.
Yeah, this guy, he probably thought more than he actually swung a hammer, but it worked out. It's like he can relay it to a guy like you, and then it's like, well, now I can get to put to work.
Exactly, yeah.
I thought that was an interesting little like equation that he had there, kind of worked out.
Yep.
But you hear people say that where they're like, well, I want a completely flat face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's gonna work out for him too much.
Yeah, I feel like the bigger the face and the flatter the face, the less forgiving it is.
For sure.
Like some people.
Have you found that too with like you, just like me and some of the other people? We've kind of all went down the rabbit hole of the long nose driving hammers.
Yeah.
And so do you put a pretty small face on the driving hammers?
Aim small, miss small.
Yeah.
And
so I think that's where people like they get a long nose one with a big face, and that's when they might feel weird to them.
And they get kind of a weird torque in the handle. If you don't have it perfectly centered, it kind of wants to twist the whole hammer because it's got that long nose.
Yeah. A little like it either feels good or it feels real bad.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I've noticed with those long nose hammers is all the weight's got to be forward in the nose. It can't be in the body. It can't be in the mass of the eye, because then it's got a rotational twist in it before you even have a mishit, because all the weight's in the middle versus the end.
Oh, I think you like, no pun intended, like hit the nail on the head there. Like, because it is true. Like it steadies itself out. Like it's kind of, veins itself and starts following yard darts on the way down and on the way up. It's pretty
There's a reason why the broadhead's the heaviest part of the arrow.
Yeah, exactly. But on that turn, so it's like the claws of a driving hammer are one of the main reasons I don't ever want to make driving hammers.
Why is that?
Because they're just so hard. It's like,
they are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's either like, so like the way I do them is I fuller them from the bottom, I start to hot cut them from the bottom, and then I cut them vertically down.
Yep.
Like either throughout this whole process, if you're just off a little bit,
it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's fucking crooked as hell. It looks like shit. Like you can never get it straight again.
Yep.
And it is like the claw of the hammer is so like I don't think it, like even when you talk to Poor, I think like he has a better understanding probably all of us that makes a nail ring correctly.
Yep.
But like, do you ring nails?
Yep.
And so what do you, when you're making your driving hammer, what do you try to put into it to make it that it's going to be nice to ring nails?
So what are the two main reasons two main big things that you want from a claw when you ring a nail? You want it to ring the nail, and you want it to let go of the fucking nail.
Release.
Exactly. So if it doesn't do both of those things, the claw sucks. It can do one of them really good, but if it doesn't do the other one, they suck.
I would add even a third. It needs to have a short action.
That's depending on where the last part of the cut is of the claw in relation to the handle. The closer
Let me chew on that.
The closer you have the point of the V to the wooden handle, the shorter the action.
Do you think angle of the claw plays in?
I think the angle of the claw can play in, and shorten that axis if there's a lot of angle. Yeah, I know exactly. Yep. So like if you had a lot of angle, it could be a little bit further from the handle, because then the handle is going to go over it where your hand's going to be to ring it. Does that make sense?
Yes. The flatter it is, the closer it needs to be.
Exactly. And like, so I don't have a lot of pitch on my claw on the hammers that I make, because to me, I don't want to have to position the handle if I have to pull a nail way down on the arc, right? So if there's a lot of arc on your hand or on the hook, your handle's got to come way far for that hook to come in the nail, and then you got to start from there. But if it's close to a 90, you just slap in and your handle's at a 90 from the shoe, and it pops it right out.
Yeah.
And so the aerodynamics of it are closer or easier.
That makes sense. It does make sense, because it is the thing that I run into there is like that if it's too straight out, though, then it seems like it's hard to get underneath the horse on the inside when you're ringing the inside nails.
Yep. It can be a little bit tougher, but as long as it's a good ringer and it takes like a quarter turn to ring it, then it's not so bad.
So
I'm a folder.
You're a folder?
So this is kind of like, yeah, I'm a folder. So this is kind of almost like
above your head.
I don't really care about ringing.
I'm all over the board. Sometimes I leave them straight up.
Yeah. I'm a folder.
Yeah.
So what do you think you got to do to make it release?
So I think, if you can imagine in your brain when you have a piece of steel and you have a really wide hot cut and you're cutting it, it's going to leave a really big trough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get it pretty thin. And if you cut it where it severs it all the way down, you have two razor edges, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the two razor edges don't cut anything because it just spins around the nail, right? It just creates a track and it spins. So you need a little bit of flat left with that big open V on the bottom of it. And so when you have that little bit of flat left on either side, then it twists the nail so it shears and breaks off. And if there's nothing sharp, it releases the nail. But that is, again, that is all a lot harder done than said.
No, I think you're right on it.
Can you send me some pictures of some of the driving hammers you've made so that I can throw them up on the video portion?
Yeah, I can do that.
So people can check them out.
Yeah. I definitely don't mass produce them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
That's you, because you make. Is there anything you make to sell that, or like, because you've pretty much made all tools?
Like, I've sold a little bit of most of them all that I've made. Like, I don't know, like, I guess I like the challenge of it. So the way I started driving hammers one day is like, to be honest, I have no clue what made me want to make a driving hammer that day. Like, I came home
everybody was making them though at kind of that time.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but there was a few. They're like, we were all trying to figure out how to make those long nose ones nice.
And so like I'd seen a couple Andy Reeder Smith had made and thought they were pretty cool, and I kind of chewed on them for a little while and like thought about how I'd go about it. And I came home from shoeing one day on a random day and just was like, I'm gonna make a driving hammer today. And I still have that one in my shoeing box in the shop, and it rings like a son of a bitch. And I think it was just dumb luck. You know?
Exactly.
And like I've probably made, I don't know, I probably made a couple of them there in the beginning, and then kind of like saw some problems in them, saw what I wanted to change, and then slowly developed the style that I have now. And none of them are exactly identical, but they all have the same kind of lines in them. And to be honest, now I really don't care if I make another one, because like the challenge of understanding them and figuring them out is it's not as driving as it was, you know.
It's so funny that it's like, so I find I do that myself of like with like items, you know, like I make one and I'm done with it, you know. It's like, well, I made that axe, I don't want to make another axe.
Yeah.
And it's like I haven't made a driving hammer in quite a while. I'm like, I kind of got them figured out. I got the process figured out.
Yeah.
Done just fucking around with those. But horseshoeing never gives me that.
No, horseshoes never do. No, I would agree. Yeah, I never get sick of making a shoe.
Deal.
Yeah.
No, I'm never, it's the same thing as like, I'm okay putting my name on tools. I hate putting my name on horseshoes.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel because I'm never happy with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I'm putting my name on something that I just like.
Yeah.
Kind of a pile of shit in my mind. Like,
yeah. No, I agree. It's kind of one of those things where, like, to be honest, I can make 3/4 fullered shoes for the next year and never get bored. Like, just a good basic 3/4 fullered shoe. Like,
you're still gonna find little things in there to.
Oh yeah, I'm one of those weird dudes that likes the Journeyman class at the convention.
Really?
Like, I love that class.
What's your favorite thing about it?
There's just no time for bullshit. You need to know what every hammer blow does and duplicate it. Like, I'm not saying that like I have it figured out. I'm just saying, like, I love that challenge of that class.
You would like the class that Austin likes to. It's like
he likes that class.
You planned motherfuckers of just like every hammer blow is gonna be perfect and replicated each time.
Yeah.
Same thing, yeah.
That is super freaking funny.
Yeah.
Something I've kind of been stewing on like this whole time ever since you brought it up about, leaving depth on feet, But the thing that has been chewing on me is that there's going to be somebody out there that's going to say, oh, but he doesn't shoot performance horses. You can't do them like that. Like, you can't leave the depth on there. So what's like kind of a rebuttal to that? You know what I mean? Like, because there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to be hating and be like, oh, he just shoots backyard horses or whatever type situation. And
yeah, no, like, I mean, I don't shoe horses going to the Olympics now. I think that's a lot location and opportunity and so on and so forth. But there was a horse at the NFR running in the barrels that I shot all summer that got her to the NFR. I mean, I've shot performance horses, like, and it's funny too, because like there's a lot of horses that I've shot and that I shoot currently that they make a living every day, like not in a show ring.
The horses still perform.
Well, not in a show ring, like an actual living on a working ranch, like.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, they're working for a living just as much, if not more, than those horses just going into the show ring.
I would hate to say it. They're working more so.
Yeah, they get worked a lot harder.
So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where like those horses in the show rings, like I shoot some show horse and they're like, well, he got a 2-hour workout today. That's pretty hard, and it's like, that horse on the ranch is putting in more than 2 hours. He
exactly, and in conditions that are 10 times more challenging than any show footing is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
just something we see on social media that just gets beat around all the time. Like that, that wouldn't work in my profession or my area or whatever. But really, like, if you're able to just shoot feet and keep feet healthy, like the horse is going to be able to do its job.
Yep.
Exactly. And being able to understand and do that.
And to me, the test is always graded when you come back to your clients. When I come back in 6 weeks or 5 weeks or 10 weeks, do I have a shit show that I got to deal with that I made?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or do I just pop the shoe off, smoke the bugger right back on, and spike it and roll on? And it's super easy. It's healthy. It's strong. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
it's hard to argue when you're like, you are obviously a very self-aware person that would be okay with yourself being like, that was shit. I need to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I feel like once you shoe horses long enough, the little voices in your head when you're shoeing a horse, what determines quality that you can let slide or not slide is it going to create a problem or not? You know?
Yeah. Having that repertoire in your head of knowing what's going to be completely detrimental or what's can slide on.
Exactly.
I think that's a great. That's where I think your experience. Like, I wish I could pay to every time one of those guys is like, yeah, that wouldn't work here. It'd be like, I wish I could pay for like you to fly to his place and shoe the horse and be like, all right, tell me that's shit.
Yeah.
Tell me that wasn't good. That this isn't gonna work out. That's gonna be bad because it is like it's just an excuse that we all like to use of the old. And I love that you included everybody else that we've interviewed so far has never given us the answer of like, it depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Like you have a plan of attack and you have something that you're going to do. You're not just going to like pull the easy out of like, that depends horse to horse. You're like, no, this is my basics.
Yeah.
Like,
and there is like a foundation of basics in horseshoeing like that either determines a shit shoeing or a good shoeing. Like, I don't care what style you shoe in, what discipline you shoe in, what environment you shoe in. If you don't cover those basics, I'm sorry, it's shit shoeing. Like, it just is. You know, and the horse is going to tell you it is.
It's hard for people to say that to themselves.
And there's a reason why guys like Craig are still working on the basics. You know, they're not easily obtained.
No,
they definitely are not.
You know, but and I think that's the bad part about social media. Like, there's really good learning aspects from YouTube, what like you guys are doing, Facebook, like all the videos and stuff. Like, it's a good place for a lot of learning, but there's also a lot of bad stuff that goes on. I feel like that does not help the trade or the profession at all.
No, but it's how do you go without it? You got it like.
It's just part of the times these days, you know, and like just almost have to just decipher between the good and the bad, and being able to understand what is good and being able to try to push, what is good. So it's kind of what Riley and I are trying to do is like try to push what's good out there, try to get it more amongst the masses.
Everybody's going to have their own opinion of what's good and what's bad. So it's like the only way for the bad the bad's never going to shut the fuck up. And so it's like,
it's almost like
if we don't speak,
bad spreads faster than good. It seems
definitely.
like, right? So somebody's got to try and do something, right?
Yep, exactly. And I applaud you guys for doing it. Like, you guys are doing a good job. Like, it's one of those things where it's hard to please everybody, and you're never going to please everybody. But it's kind of one of those things where if somebody's got a major discrepancy on what you guys are doing, there's nothing stopping them from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, do your own thing. And that's like, honestly, just like you guys, like you saying that you think we're doing a good thing, that goes 100 times further with me than those guys saying that we're doing a bad thing. I don't give a fuck about those guys. They aren't my crowd anyways. And it's like, I'm not trying to be rude at saying that, but it's like, you're always going to find your own crowd. And if you just aren't liking what we're saying, then it's probably just like, there's somebody out there saying what you want to hear. Just go find your people and be happier. Don't be such a sour sport about the whole
Yeah, exactly.
thing.
And I feel like it's kind of an environment too where the people that I guess don't have the filter to not say stuff, and they say stuff like you were kind of commenting on, Gavin, like, somebody's saying that, it won't work in my area. Well, you can do it in different manners, you know what I mean? Like, you can do it in manners that you're trying to like present yourself in a learning environment, or you're just trying to be a shithead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can reword that question pretty well. Of saying of like, wow, I don't know how I could do that. Could somebody help me out here?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a completely.
Yep.
Well, Tom, for you, so the question that I've been asking people as of late is, who are like I consider like a Mount Rushmore, 4 people that you consider to be monumental in your life. Like, who would 4 people be to you that you look up to and kind of value as far as where have brought you to where you are now?
Probably the first and foremost guy probably would be, and has nothing to do with horseshoeing.
That's fine.
Is one of the dairy farmers I worked for.
I was gonna say, if you say David Goggins.
Yeah, we've had.
No, these are all people that like I've met, you know what I mean, and like actually in my life. But his name is Ronnie Molitor, and just a super good dude. And he was the type of guy that always had a smile on his face, always was positive, even when the biggest problems and major disasters were going on in the dairy farm. He still had a good attitude about it, and he taught me a lot about just being a good man. You know what I mean? Having a good work ethic and just good mindset.
It's important.
Yeah, and I've never met another human being that worked as hard as that guy did. Like, and so I guess the other person would definitely be my wife. She's taught me not necessarily, again, about horseshoe and stuff, but just, a lot about life and a lot about, just being a man and how to communicate in all aspects of life. You know, being a better communicator is key in your business, is key in, you know, your social environment, you know, everything.
Huge.
And I would say that Craig's up there. That dude's taught me more about horseshoeing in this career than I could have ever hoped to have learned, you know, especially from even just one guy. He was monumental in my coming through the competition and understanding what I was actually doing to steel and to feet, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, who would be the fourth?
That's to be determined.
To be determined.
Yeah.
TBA.
Yep.
I'll let it slide.
Yeah, to be determined. That's a spot that's always up for grabs. Yep.
Jeremiah Johnson.
That's right. Yep.
Man,
So-
Tom, unless you got another question for him, Gavin.
So we've been sitting here. For those of you who are watching on the video, Tom, you're sitting in front of a cat on your wall.
And that's a big
Is
cat.
there,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, is
cougar.
there a story behind it?
Yeah, I killed it.
Yeah. Story is that fucker's dead.
So I shot that. It's been a long time. It's probably, I would say 2008. One of the guys that I apprenticed with a bunch was a very avid hunter. He was on the realm of a hunter that would make Jim Quick kind of look like he just kind of likes to hunt a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And he had some hounds, and I'd never been around hounds very much. So it's really cool to see that you got a hound pup, Riley, and kind of watching that come along. That's kind of a lot of fun for me to watch as well, because I've spent a little bit of time
I'll have to
around
send you
him.
the videos I don't post to
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah. And I've spent enough time around him where, like, it's just a cool thing, you know, to get to use your dog on. And so he had some dogs, and we treat a bunch of cats, and this was a cat that we treated one morning, and it was like we would normally leave his place at like 3:00 in the morning after a fresh snowfall, so we could cut tracks. And it was about 16 below zero when we left his house that morning. It was cold as shit. And we cut these tracks right alongside of a river. And there was a bunch of deer tracks, and the river was kind of frozen, but kind of not frozen. And so we didn't want to let the dogs go right off the bat because, one, it was so freaking cold out already, they might have burnt their lungs. And then second, there was so much trash around there that we were afraid that we might be on the race for the next 3 days. And so we were walking the dogs down through the river and kind of in the brush a little bit. And there was a clearing about 400 yards away in a meadow. And we actually spotted the cat running at a lope across the meadow that she heard the dogs. And so as soon as we saw him, the dogs actually saw her, and they didn't even go for the track. They just went straight to her, and they treat her in 10 minutes. And so we got to the
nose
tree.
up and got moving.
Yeah, exactly. And we got to the tree, and it was kind of on a side hill, on like a rock slide. And she jumped right over the top of our heads and went off running again. And she ran about a half a mile, and they treat her. And she was a bit higher up in this tree, and she had her front and hind legs spread on two branches. And I had my 44 mag pistol to shoot her with. And so I put two through her from the bottom of her chest, and she jumped down and ran for about 200 yards before she got stuck in some rocks. And then I shot her a couple more times and carried her out.
Jeez.
And I mean, they're
hardy.
tough. Yeah, they're tough.
They are and a lot of people don't get it. It's like, it's a predator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They have some life in them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a deer.
Nope. And
they have some living.
And it was interesting too, because when I shot her, the last time I shot her, the guy that I was with said to shoot her one more time, and I was like, well, I think she's got quite a few bullet holes in her. He's like, she's far from dead yet. And so then I
still
shot
got
her.
bullets in that gun.
Yep. I shot her one more time, and she arched her back up and, you know, let out a big scream. And then he was like, all right, now she's going to die. And I was like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But
I
was
wouldn't
fun.
have thought that. I mean,
Yeah, but it was a fun hunt, and she was probably an average size female, probably about 4 or 5 years old, and weighed about 110, 115 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So-
not a bad cat.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of cats in Montana, though.
yeah. There's
Right.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think the best day that we were treeing cats, I think we treed 5 different cats in one day.
That's a
And,
great.
like,
Not meaning that you're shooting them.
Nope, just treating them.
You're not shooting all. You're just treating them.
Yep.
Yeah.
So-
just so people understand that.
All the cats that we treed, we only shot 2 of. This was one
That's
of them,
the
and then
best
he
part
shot
about
one
running
time.
dogs. Is you can be
Yeah.
so selective.
Yep.
So selective
When
whether
you have to
even
be,
let them go.
yeah. Well, you have to be with like the quotas and stuff. You're allowed a certain number of male and female cats in each region, and you have to
Yeah.
know where the quota is for that day before you can
Yep.
shoot one. You know, they regulate it really well.
Yeah.
No, it's
So
it is the best way to take care of the cats. Really.
yeah, and
is with
it's
the hounds.
amazing too because like you get to watch your dogs work. You know, it's like taking your dog pheasant hunting but never shooting a pheasant. You know,
Yeah.
it
I
kind of
owned
sucks.
bird dogs before hounds, and
Mhm.
I gotta say, flushing a pheasant ain't got shit on running a cat.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It's a completely different thing. So
Yep. when you're
you
standing
get a dog
underneath a tree
treeing
with a
on
cat.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, treeing stuff is pretty damn cool.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
it's pretty
Yeah.
cool to see that dog cast out with so far away from you, and he is doing they're doing their thing. Like
Yeah,
that,
they're doing
it
their
is-
job.
Yeah, cat and dog are
Yep.
all a part of this. You know, they naturally know what to do with each other. It's pretty
Yep.
cool.
The cool part about when you get to the trees, you don't know what you're going to see up it. You might see a bobcat. You might see a mountain lion. You might see a
Yep.
bear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It might get interesting.
Yep.
Man, we appreciate you taking the time, Tom, to get on here, spread some of your knowledge, let people get to know you. We really appreciate it.
You
Yeah,
bet.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you here in the next few months then.
Yeah, you bet. Look forward to it.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tom.
You bet. You guys have a good night.
You could just